ready to totally crush this Promotions Demonstrator interview. We're doing a deep dive today on some of those make-or-break interview questions.
It's not just about knowing the answers, is it? It's about how you deliver them. Confidence and that special something that says, I'm the one for this job.
100%. And today, we're going to unpack exactly how to do that, and we'll sprinkle in some of those career insights from the Career Guide, Promotions Demonstrator, because, well, it's always good to know where your career could go, right?
Totally. And of course, it wouldn't be a deep dive without checking out how RoleCatcher's AI can give you that something extra to craft those killer responses.
Okay, so let's just jump right in with this first question from the interview guide, Promotions Demonstrator. Can you tell me about your experience with product demonstrations? Now, this one might feel kind of simple, but I'm thinking there's got to be a way to answer it that's more than just, like, listing off your old jobs, right?
You're right. The cool thing is, almost everyone, no matter what their background is, has done some kind of product demonstration without even realizing it. Think about it. Ever convince a friend to try a new restaurant? Or raved about a book that blew you away?
Okay, I see what you're getting at. You're talking about those everyday moments where you had to sell someone on something, really highlighting why it's so great, maybe even handling a little skepticism along the way.
Exactly. So even if you haven't officially been a promotions demonstrator, you can use those experiences. Like, did you volunteer at a fundraiser?
Yeah.
Or teach someone a new skill? Those are all chances to show off how well you communicate and get people engaged.
That's brilliant. So instead of focusing on what you haven't done, you're focusing on those transferable skills you've picked up along the way. Okay, let's look at another question from the guide. Have you ever had to deal with a difficult customer during a demonstration? How did you approach the situation? This one's tricky, right? Because you don't want to come across as someone who can't handle a tough situation, but you also don't want to badmouth any past customers.
It's a tough one for sure. This question isn't really about the actual situation, but more about how you, as a professional, handle the pressure and solve the problem.
So should you have a specific story ready to go, or is it more about just outlining your general approach?
A good story can be memorable, but the key is really to show your thought process. Like, start by acknowledging that in any job where you're dealing with customers, tricky situations are going to happen. Then you can walk the interviewer through how you deal with that. Do you really listen to them? Trying to see it from their point of view, find some kind of common ground.
And maybe even have some de-escalation tactics up your sleeve. Right? I bet staying calm is super important.
Totally. The interviewer wants to see that you can be professional and find solutions, even when you're dealing with a really difficult customer.
They're like turning a negative into a positive, showing them you have amazing customer service skills. All right, let's tackle this one. Can you give an example of a successful product demonstration you've conducted? This one feels like it needs some serious evidence, right?
It does, and this is where the STAR method is your new best friend.
For those who haven't heard of the STAR method, can you give us a quick breakdown?
Absolutely. STAR. Situation, task, action, result. It's a way to structure your answers to these kinds of behavioral interview questions. You start by setting the scene, that's your situation. Then you say what you were trying to achieve, the task. Then what steps you actually took, the action. And finally, what the awesome outcome was, the result.
So it's like telling a mini story, but with a clear beginning, middle, and end. And speaking of stories, tell me more about how RoleCatcher's AI can help people tailor their answers to these interview questions. I know we touched on it earlier, but I think it's worth digging into.
RoleCatcher's AI is pretty cool, actually. It looks at the job description, sees what kind of experience you've got, and then helps you tweak those answers so you're highlighting the right stuff, the skills or keywords that this specific employer really cares about.
So instead of giving some generic answer about a successful product demonstration, the AI helps you make it super specific to what they're looking for. That's pretty slick.
Exactly. It's like having your own personal coach, someone who knows exactly what those hiring managers want to hear. And it's not just about the answers themselves. It's about getting feedback, too.
Because even if you prepare like crazy, it's hard to be objective about your own performance, right?
Yeah.
So how does the AI actually give you feedback? Does it like analyze your tone of voice or something?
It's even cooler than that. It uses this thing called natural language processing, so it gets what you're saying, AD, how you're saying it. It can tell if you're using too many filler words, if your pace is off, even how enthusiastic you sound. Then it gives you tips on how to improve.
Whoa, that's next level. Like a virtual interview coach, giving you feedback in real time. That could be a game changer for people who get nervous in interviews.
Exactly. It's all about boosting that confidence so you can really shine. Speaking of shining, let's get back to those interview questions from the interview guide. Promotions Demonstrator. This one caught my eye. How do you stay up to date on new products and trends in your industry?
Oh, that's a good one. It's not just about knowing your stuff, it's about showing them you're always learning and trying to be ahead of the game.
Exactly. Just saying you read industry magazines isn't going to cut it here. You've got to show real curiosity, like you're
100%.
actively searching for new info and you're really plugged into what's happening in the industry.
So what's the best way to answer this one? Should you just list every blog and podcast you follow?
It's not about bombarding them with information overload. It's about being smart. Pick a few key publications, influencers, or experts that you actually follow. Maybe mention a recent article or podcast episode that you found interesting and explain why.
That's a great way to show that you're not just passively reading stuff, but really thinking about it and applying it to your own work.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to mention any online courses, webinars, or workshops you've taken. It shows you're proactive about your own development.
You know, this talk about staying up to date has me thinking about the career paths they talk about in the career guide, Promotions Demonstrator. It mentions a bunch of different ways to move up, like leadership roles or becoming a specialist in something. What have you seen? What do people who are successful in this field have in common?
One of the biggest things is having a clear idea of where you want to go with your career. Like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? What are your long-term goals? Having a plan helps you make good decisions about your development and go after opportunities that fit with what you want to achieve.
Makes sense. It's not just about climbing the ladder, it's about making sure you're on the right ladder in the first place. But what about people just starting out?
Yeah.
How do you go from being a great demonstrator to, say, managing a team or creating training programs?
It's all about looking for growth opportunities in your current role. Could you take on more responsibility, mentor someone new, volunteer for a project that challenges you? These are all ways to show you've got leadership potential and gain some valuable experience.
So it's about going above and beyond, really showing initiative and a desire to learn and grow. And this is where RoleCatcher's AI could be a huge help, right? Because it can look at your skills and experience and maybe even suggest career paths you hadn't thought of.
Exactly. The AI can look at your profile and compare it to tons of others in its database. It can point out potential areas for growth and even suggest relevant certifications or training programs.
It's like having a personal career counselor in your pocket.
That's a great way to put it. But let's not forget about the interview itself. We still got some great questions to cover.
You're right. We can't let our listener walk into that interview unprepared. What's up next?
All right, this next one from the guide is all about teamwork. Tell me about a time you had to work with a team to achieve a common goal. This is a classic interview question, and for good reason. It tells the interviewer a lot about how you collaborate and communicate with others.
It's interesting because even though a promotions demonstrator might spend a lot of time interacting one-on-one with customers, there's always a team behind the scenes, right? Like marketing, sales support, or even just the people setting up those displays.
Absolutely. So when you answer this question, think about a time you had to work really well with others to get something done. Maybe a group project in school or volunteering for something.
And don't be afraid to talk about the challenges you face as a team. It's all about showing how you solve problems and work through disagreements constructively.
For sure. And always emphasize the positive outcome. How did your teamwork lead to success?
Speaking of success, let's talk about another question from the guide. What are your salary expectations? Now, this one can be a little,
A little awkward.
yeah, exactly.
It's like this weird dance. You don't want to sell yourself short, but you also don't want to price yourself out of the running.
So what's the best way to handle it?
Research is key. Before the interview, take some time to look at typical salaries for similar roles in your area.
Websites like Glassdoor and Salary.com are good for that.
Totally. And don't forget to factor in your experience, your skills, and your education. Once you have a salary range in mind, you can confidently tell the interviewer.
It's also smart to mention that you're flexible and open to talking about compensation more once you know more about the benefits and the career path.
Exactly. It shows you're thinking long-term, not just focused on the number.
Okay, we've covered a ton today. From nailing those interview answers to understanding what a career as a promotions demonstrator can look like.
And we even looked at how RoleCatcher's AI can be a total game changer throughout your job search, from making your resume and cover letter awesome to giving you personalized feedback on your interview skills.
I think our listeners are ready to rock that interview. But before we wrap up, I want to leave them with something to think about as they work towards becoming a Promotions Demonstrator superstar.
Ooh, I like it. Hit me with it.
In this digital age, how do you see the role of a Promotions Demonstrator changing? What skills are going to be most important for success in the future?
Now, that's a question. It really makes you think about how technology and human connection are merging, which is really what promotions demonstrators are all about.
That's a great point to end on. We'll leave you to ponder that, dear listener. And best of luck with your interview. Remember, confidence, enthusiasm, and a real passion for connecting with people will take you far.
Until next time, happy job hunting. It's like having a personalized career counselor right in your pocket.
That's a great way to think about it. But let's not forget about the interview itself. We've still got some juicy questions to cover.
You're right. We can't let our listeners walk into that interview unprepared. What's next?
All right, this next one from the guide is all about teamwork. Tell me about a time you had to work with a team to achieve a common goal. This is a classic, and for a good reason. It tells the interviewer a lot about how you collaborate and how you communicate.
It's interesting, right? Even though a promotions demonstrator might spend a lot of time one-on-one with customers, there's always a team behind the scenes, like marketing, sales support, even the folks setting up those displays.
Absolutely. So when you answer this one, think about a time when you had to really work well with others to get something done, like a group project back in school or maybe a time you volunteered.
And don't shy away from those challenges you faced as a team. That's all part of showing your problem-solving skills, how you work through disagreements.
And always, always focus on the positive outcome. How did your teamwork lead to success?
Speaking of success, let's talk about another one from the guide. What are your salary expectations? This one always feels a little
Awkward.
yeah, awkward. Like you don't want to aim too low, but you don't want to scare them off either.
So how do you answer it without, messing it up?
Research, research, research. Before you even step into that interview room, do your homework. Look at typical salaries for similar jobs in your area.
Websites like Glassdoor and Salary.com are super helpful for that.
Totally. And don't forget to factor in your experience, your skills, what kind of education you have. Once you've got a range in mind, you can confidently tell them what you're looking for.
It's also a good idea to mention that you're flexible, open to discussing it more once you know more about the whole package, the benefits, the career path.
Exactly. Shows you're in it for the long haul, not just fixated on a number.
Okay, we have covered so much today, from absolutely nailing those interview answers to really understanding what a career as a promotions demonstrator can look like.
And we even dug into how RoleCatcher's AI can give you that extra edge throughout your job search. From spiffing up that resume and cover letter to getting personalized feedback on those all-important interview skills.
I think our listener is more than ready to go out there and ace that interview.
I think so too.
But before we wrap up, I always like to leave our listeners with something to think about, something to keep those wheels turning as they work towards becoming a promotions demonstrator superstar.
I love it. Lay it on me.
In this increasingly digital world, how do you see the role of a promotions demonstrator evolving? What skills are going to be most essential for success in the future?
Wow. Now that's a question. It really makes you think about how technology and, that human touch, how those two things are merging, which is what this job is all about.
On that note, we'll leave you to ponder that, dear listener. And best of luck with that interview. Remember, confidence, a little bit of enthusiasm, and a genuine passion for connecting with people. That'll take you far.
Until next time, happy job hunting.